This is the DRF Players Podcast. Here are your hosts, Peter Thomas Fornatel and Jonathan Kinchin.
Hello and welcome to the DRF Players Podcast. This is show 348, Thursday, July 5th, 2018 edition. I'm your host, Peter Thomas Fornatel, back with you in an all-new location. You can probably hear the echo, but I think it's like a good-sounding echo. I sound like I'm in a DJ booth and not a tinny, unprofessional echo like we usually have. I am in Maine, in the wilderness, in western Maine, White Mountains. I'm looking out at, it's pretty much too dark to see at this point, but there's a lake in front of me. We're recording this as live, if you couldn't tell. And I'm in, I don't know what I want to call it. It's sort of like a glass recording studio on a lake in Maine. So that's where I am. Muggsy, the handicapping Labrador, has decided to go grub for food in the other room, is not joining me today, but joining me, as usual, from the planet Texas, the peripatetic one, the people's champion, Jonathan Kinchin. JK, what's up?
Yeah, I'm actually really glad you started the show off letting people know that we recorded this Thursday evening. It's currently 8:45 Central, 9:45 Eastern p.m. Be very clear about p.m. because I don't want anyone judging me after they hear this next sound.
JK, you're not fooling anybody. Even though we typically do record this show at 11 a.m., you honestly expect the listeners to believe you've never been drinking during one before?
No, I'll be honest. Never in the okay, hold on. Maybe traveling, like getting ready to go to the track. I had a mimosa or something like that. I will say this, though. I will not say that I haven't ever been a little rough around the edges, but that was that one time when you woke me up when I was in Vegas.
I wish. I'm not sure. I know that producers Craig and AJ have a series of outtakes. I am hoping that it was caught for the outtakes for all of posterity. My conversation with you when you first answered the phone, and I basically just like berated you that morning, and was like, "You're not going to sound like that on the show, are you? You sound like you're asleep."
I think my answer was, "No, Pete. I have 6 minutes."
Well, we need no minutes today. We're ready to dive in. We've got this big card at Belmont. Big action at Arlington this weekend. A lot of contest players heading to Arlington. Will you be firing up the jet and making a visit, Jacob?
I am. It's one of the reasons we recorded tonight. Me and Austin and my contest buddy, we're going to head up tomorrow, and we're trying to decide if we're going to do the Field Museum. Have you done this before, Pete, in Chicago?
No, Perrin has been to Chicago, but she was very young. The main thing I remember was trying to go to the map room with Perrin as an infant and them kicking me out because she was underage. That didn't go over too well. But anyway, we did not get to do any of the fun touristy stuff. What's your other option?
Or a 120 Cubs game.
Oh, my God. I mean, look, I love museums, but, I mean, Wrigley Field, to me, I was just talking about it today, how it's my sort of 1 and 1A favorite ballpark along with Fenway. Have you been to Wrigley before?
I've never been to Wrigley, no.
Oh, dude, do it. Do it. It's great. You're going to have a great atmosphere there. Austin loves sports. He's going to love it. I give you my highest recommendation to go to Wrigley Field.
Okay, well, then that might be the move, and then Saturday obviously we'll be at Arlington Park, getting ready to attack the contest. Interesting format, Pete. A lot of races. Like
how's it work?
Well, I don't have it in front of me, so of course I'm going to butcher it. But you got to play like a certain amount of races from Arlington, but then you can play races from Delaware, Woodbine, Monmouth, Belmont, and Gulfstream. Like you can fill in your others.
Very interesting. Almost a little bit like the Monmouth contest, I guess, is the other live bank contest I can think of that allows you to do that. Is it still no entry fee?
It is. It's no entry fee, but the prize pool is kind of evidence of that, and I don't mean that to be whatever. It's 1 BCBC and 3 NHC, right? There's no cash or anything like that. So, but it's still
it's all added.
It's all added. It's fine. It's all added, but it's when you're warming up the jet,
That jet fuel ain't free. We know that much. That jet fuel ain't free, JK. But I love that Austin's there. He was your talisman, your good luck charm when you won the June challenge at Santa Anita. Maybe you and the little guy can go back to back. Other interesting news in your personal life, Jonathan, that I heard recently, apparently your Hollywood golf foursome is now complete. Now you, B squared, and Cube have a fourth guy to play with in LeBron James. Are you excited?
Yeah, I mean, Braun and I, we go way back. Did you hear that they named a horse LeBron, or either LeBron J or L James, one of the two. I can't remember which one it was, but I think it was LeBron J. Phoenix Thoroughbreds, the same people that named the horse Gronkowski. Named him. I think it's LeBron J, or I can't remember which one it is, but it's one of the two.
That's pretty cool. Maybe we can get him out to the Logan Suite at Santa Anita with the crew at some point. That's going to be a wild ride. Let's just put it that way. And as long as we're talking about other sports, let's touch on the World Cup briefly. Have you been watching as obsessively as I have been?
Not as obsessively. Like I mean, I answer the phone when you call me when it's on, but
that's absolutely true.
Yeah, I have been watching.
I've declined more JK calls since the World Cup started than in the entire history of our friendship behind. But I'm like thinking to myself, doesn't he know it's halftime in 5 minutes? Can't you wait?
Yeah, no, I have been enjoying it. I've been watching wherever I'm at. One of my favorite things to do is like try to find a place where like people from that country are watching. And I watched from just like a random restaurant, the Colombia and who played England game the other day. And I was in a place with like a bunch of Colombians. And when they scored that last goal, the place like erupted, and Austin was with me, and his eyes just lit up like he had never seen so many people so happy about something. And we went home that night, and we've been playing FIFA for like the last 3 days. All he wants to do is play FIFA.
That's awesome.
So I cried a tear of joy.
That's very cool. If you stuck around for the next 35 minutes, you've never seen people look so sad.
No, we left before that. we decided to go home and watch the penalty shootout at home. So we got out of there. But no, I've been enjoying it. I talk about it all the time. I don't mean to be hateful, but GoGo in-flight Wi-Fi on American is not very good. You can't stream video. But right. American is transitioning to this new Wi-Fi where I've streamed HD like Keeneland, HD Santa Anita, HD Belmont, Naira, whatever on the plane. And my fingers are crossed tomorrow morning that our plane has that Wi-Fi because we'll watch the game on the plane. So.
Fabulous. Speaking of watching World Cup matches with invested parties, now this won't necessarily happen. I don't want any of our English football nuts to blame me for mushing them if this all goes wrong. But should England go ahead and advance past Sweden, that would put me in the UK for the semifinal. And funny enough, I'm planning on going to the races the day that the match would be, thinking about adding a new course to my list over in the eastern seaboard, East Anglia, I think they call it, for Yarmouth races during the day, and then going to be looking for a pub somewhere near to watch with the Brits. I'll be doing that whether or not the Brits are in the match, but it would certainly be more exciting experience to watch it among them. I'm sure they're all at this point waiting for the other shoe to drop, such as the nature of being a fan of the English national team. But boy, they seem to be writing their own story, and it would be something else.
Have they ever won a World Cup before?
Yes, 1966 they won.
Okay.
But it's been a lot of heartbreak and heartache since. Usually a match they should have won on penalty kicks, which is what I'm sure they were all assuming was going to happen the other day. I wish I had been looking at the in-running market on Betfair. I wonder if there was like a paranoia as it got to PKs, a market inefficiency with just all the English supporters just thinking, wait, we never win a penalty shootout. This is surely going to go the wrong way. I didn't look. Maybe if some of our Betfair using English friends are watching. I'd love to know what price England were at the start of the shootout, and I'd love to know what price they drifted to after they boned the third one. But anyway, it's been great fun. I've been really, really digging it. Really looking forward to this trip to England. But we have some great racing in the USA to talk about before this trip happens. I've really enjoyed these couple of weeks. It hasn't even been a couple of weeks. It's been 2 shows we've missed. Anything interesting happening in your life in the interim? Anything you want to tell the people about, JK?
Oh, well, I mean, I guess we should tell them about the big horse winning if they didn't already know.
That's where I was going with that.
What a treat that was to be there for that. The 10 Strike crew is one of a kind. It was so much fun. Clay Sanders, Marshall wasn't able to be there, but Clay kind of hosted us all, and there was about 22 of us there. And so
where were you sitting?
We sat up on the 4th floor where we sat, Pete, after that seminar, but like around the corner from there.
Oh yeah, it's like some sort of, I know the name and it's not coming to me, but I know exactly what you mean. It's great hospitality area there, really up there with the ones that we always rave about on the show. I wish I could remember the name, but that sort of Woodbine turf clubby area,
exactly,
really special, and a great buffet. I mean, there's contest players. Granted, this was in the contest tent, but there are contest players who still talk about the buffet from last year's Woodbine Mile tournament. Folks who want a taste of this great hospitality that Woodbine is famous for players and owners, definitely consider coming to that September tournament. I think I will be there again as well. But so you had a good experience up there, and let's talk about this. Long on Value, his campaign this year, his second win really looked game, impressive on the clock, impressive to the eye. Putting our own blessed involvement aside, JK. How good is this horse?
I mean, I think he's really good. I mean, he's closed the second time. He's closed into extremely slow fractions, and still ended with a good enough final time. I think he's really good. I think that I think 5. The thing is, I think 5.5 is going to be fine for him because he's going to have a real pace to run at 5.5 come the Breeders' Cup. This weekend, our last weekend was a win and you're in, so. He's obviously he needs to be supplemented, but the rest of the partners seem game to make that happen. So he'll show up in that race with some real pace to run out, with some real, some Jason services and some other really quick types that are going to be forwardly placed and set it up for him. He'll actually get a pace to run into. There's a possibility we'll see him at Saratoga. I believe the Troy is the Sunday after the Whitney, so. Have to get you up out of bed. Hopefully you don't fall into anyone's swimming pool in your underwear, but we'll get you up the next morning.
I didn't fall into that swimming pool. I jumped headlong into it. I'd like to make that point. Video of that incident exists somewhere. I think I need to find all the copies and burn it. But as it is, I have to be very, very nice to Desiree.
Is that the night that I lost where I lost like $12 cash?
Yeah, we thought we lost $500. It's all related, don't you remember? Because we had this money that we had won, I guess, and the whole idea was I was supposed to hang on to it, and I knew I had it in my pocket, and then in the morning I couldn't find it in my pocket, and then later you do that trick where you reconstruct the evening, and it was like, wait a second, when I went and snuck over to the neighbors and dove into the swimming pool, I didn't leave my shorts on. I was just in my underwear. I dropped my shorts over on our side of the fence, and sure enough, picked up the shorts. The money was in the pocket. It was just like we hit the pick 4 again.
Yes, because we had already kind of written it off as if it was gone.
I was just like, somebody took it. So some Pipes had a bad day. He got some sticky fingers. I don't know what happened. Pipes would never do that. That's a joke. But you know what I mean. We wrote it off, but we got it all back. So yeah, the Troy would be interesting. You'd have to think, as well as this horse has run in the past at Woodbine, that the Woodbine Mile could possibly be a target down the line. Obviously, our interest in this horse is honorary, and I'm not, we're not making any decisions, but I mean, it certainly seems like a very logical idea given how well he's run there and the fact that that would be another grade one. What do you think? How would you feel about him going back out to the mile just from a handicapping perspective?
Yeah, here's the thing is like, I actually thought about this the other day. And like I said, forgive me for speculating like I really have or suggesting like I really have a say. I'm just saying.
We're doing pretend owner stuff now, which is fine.
If he was going to run in Woodbine, but he was prepped as if he was still running short, and then like I don't want him to be prepped to win that race. Like done something different with his training, and then now he's cutting back from a mile to 5.5. It's a pretty big cutback,
Right. It's something to consider for sure.
But at the same time, winning the Woodbine Mile is really cool too. But there's something about those the purple and gold that probably strikes a little bit of a better tune. But Woodbine was great. I'd love to go back. I had a great time in Toronto, just hanging out in Toronto in general. Like that place is really fun. The Ubers are really cheap.
It's a great city.
I love when the Uber comes up in Canadian dollars and it's like $20 and you're like, $20? That's really only like 14. That's great.
Great beer and food all over that city. A lot of amazing horse players and good friends of the show. We're big in Toronto, JK. Did you see anybody who hollered at you because of the podcast?
I ran into a couple of people. Yeah. I will say this though. Someone mentioned to me about having kind of like a Ryder Cup. Toronto versus the U.S., like Canada versus the U.S. Handicapping contest. I mean, that would be really fun. We've
done like an absolute baby version of it the last 2 years at Woodbine for that mile day thing, where it was basically just Mike Eves and I making a bet. Where the first year it was, I took the numerical disadvantage to have like the USA players against the Toronto players, and the loser would have to wear the hockey jersey of the other guy's choice at the next year's event. So Mike Eves got to walk around the Woodbine grandstand in a New York Islanders jersey, and I think had various things thrown at him, angry Leaf fans. Then we had the same bet for 2017, and then when Ali Aksoy won, it's been decided that for the 2018 event, I will be showing up in a Turkish national team jersey. I'm not sure if it'll be hockey or soccer, but either way, I'm actually looking forward to that one because I don't think that will provoke the same animus that the Islanders did with those folks having nights about Trottier and Bossy up there at Woodbine. But back to final thought on Long Island Value. Fortunately, these decisions well above our pay grade, and I have every confidence that this amazing team in charge of this horse is going to do what's right for the horse, and we can continue to enjoy our spot snugly at the back of the bandwagon. What do you think?
Yeah, the winner's circle picture. I'm way in the back. That's where I felt like I deserved to be.
I noted your grin. I noted the grin on your face. I couldn't describe the grin the way I wanted to for fear that the FCC would come shut us down. But on out of the gate, I discussed that a little bit. I couldn't possibly pass up the opportunity. Any other thoughts on racing from last weekend before we move ahead? We've taken long not before we got to the racing, but we can bust through some races at Belmont and Arlington and anywhere else that you had an opportunity to look. But you want to look back before we look forward at all?
I got snapped in the last leg of the pick six at Gulfstream by a 25-1 firster.
Ugh. Yeah, that was I went back and looked. I wish I could. Do you remember the trainer's name?
No, not.
I'm totally spacing on it, but it could be easily looked up. I went back and did a formulator dive on him. Not the first time he's put one over. I think that's a trainer who you want to be looking at, and I'm annoyed at myself that I'm not coming up with the name. But not the first time in like a cheap maidens, not always with firsters, but I mean, seems like somebody who knows how to set up a horse to run well in a big spot. And in picks in the future, I wouldn't blame folks for throwing the horse in because
Castillo.
If you didn't have, that's who it is.
Yeah, Castillo.
if you didn't have that angle, you wouldn't come up with that horse. So I do mention that. That's a tough one. Yeah, that was racing at its best, right? You have these two big force outs going off 30 minutes away from each other when one could have just as easily run on the Sunday, and we could have had two in a row that we could really focus on. But
I just hate the fact that someone has convinced someone that good competitive racing is 10 maiden claimers going 6 at Gulfstream. Like that, it's just not. It's not.
Well, right, and you almost get it. You almost get the greed when they're looking to preserve the 6-figure jackpot, looking to create a carryover. But on the force out day, it doesn't matter. Like, you could have a good 8-horse competitive race, and I don't know. I'm no economist, but I don't think you're going to adversely affect your handle in that situation.
The 20 cents paid $200,000, right?
Mm-hmm. Not too bad, is it?
I had the 1. The horse was 22-1. I had the 1 and the 3 who ran second and third. The 3 was 2-1. I had that one once. What was that worth?
Oh, I mean, it's so hard to say in something like that. And let me guess, they didn't post a will pay.
No, they don't ever post. They don't ever post will pays for the rainbow payout, the mandatory payout. I don't understand why.
Yeah, it's more than you have missing it, but let's face it, JK. You probably just would have spent that money on you would have spent that money on food and booze, and the other half you would have wasted. So
Canadian bacon. I was in Canada. We're in Canadian bacon.
All right. Should we talk about some racing from this week? You got anything else looking backwards?
Let's do it.
All right. Let's start off with the Dwyer, another race that we can have a nice long tangent off of. I didn't notice what time we started recording, by the way. Do you have that information recorded? 35-ish?
We are at 22 minutes now. We have 38 left.
Oh, we got loads of time. That's beautiful. Mm-hmm. And we can run a little long, I think, without getting into any trouble. Let's start with the Dwyer, JK. Return to the races of a horse who I have been a very vocal defender of in Mendelssohn. Didn't think you could rate him off that Kentucky Derby performance where he got mauled a couple of times and wasn't asked in the stretch. I think he's shown an amazing amount of talent on different surfaces and pace scenarios and short field that he could potentially be able to boss coming back. It clearly pointed for this for a while. I'm loving his chances. I just don't know. I don't think I could advise an odds-on wager. I think that would be a leave alone. Internationally right now, I'm seeing 6-4, our 3-2, morning line 8-5. At those kind of numbers, he would be a horse that I would loan a press. What are your thoughts on Mendelssohn and the Dwyer?
Yeah, I had to Google that word you always say when you describe Mike Hogan, host emeritus.
Yeah, podcast host emeritus. You don't know emeritus?
Well, no, of course I don't. I had to Google it. I mean, I assumed what it was, but so Mike actually, made a point today, and I think it's an interesting point that I think our listeners, a topic that I think that a lot of people are on both sides of the aisle on is like formulator stats, and Mike had kind of pointed out that, and correctly so, that Aidan O'Brien has not won a dirt race in the U.S. in like 17 years. Like he's tried a few times, more than a few. I don't know exactly the number of times he's tried, but he hasn't won in 17 years on the dirt. And that's a powerful stat. When someone has tried something 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 times, and they have not done it successfully, it's something that we should all open our eyes and look at. That was Mike's point. And I agree with that. With that said, though, I think that stat is misleading because, and I don't know the answer because it's kind of a hard thing to do with international form, but when was the last time Aidan has run a horse here on the dirt that has won on the dirt previously?
I think I know. I think it would be, was it dirt back then or was it synth? I think it might have been dirt. wasn't he Master of Hounds who ran, whose subsequent loss contributing to that stat would have been like a sneaky good fourth in the Kentucky Derby, who had won the UAE Derby back something years ago? That would be my guess as to the last one. And other than him, I think the answer might be none of them have won on the dirt.
Right. Yeah, it's tricky because you get that sometimes with let's just call it a Wednesday, Thursday stat, right? First time or, dirt to turf, or turf to dirt. The guy is 2 for 47, but 30 of those turf to dirts are when he's dropping the horse in for a tag. And so he just wanted, there's a condition that the horse fit on the dirt. So he tried him in there. Well, that doesn't really suggest that he can't do it with a good horse. He was been doing it with bad horses. And so I think there's a lot of circumstances you have to figure out. And so if you want to bet against Mendelssohn because the rail was good at Dubai. Bet against Mendelssohn because he's been shipping back and forth from overseas. Bet against Mendelssohn because there's a chance he's going to be forwardly placed and see a pace that he hasn't seen yet. Bet against him because the dirt experiment went totally wrong, and there could be some aftermath to that. Those are all reasons, in my opinion, if you want to bet against him, or bet against him because he's 4 to 5. But don't bet against him
because he'll go that short.
I mean, when I look at the race, I don't see how I think he's going to win for fun, but
yeah,
and it's not because he's a freak. I think he's a very talented animal. Don't get me wrong.
Might be a freak, man.
He might. You're right. He might be a freak, but I'm not saying that he's the most likely winner and that he's probably gonna to win for fun because he's the next coming and we all better watch out. I think that it's because the field is really not very good.
Yeah, we'll get to the field in a minute, but let's leave it with Mendelssohn for a moment, and let's go back to your specific point. We used to play a game on the show with Mike all the time called Good Stat, Bad Stat. The idea is that the numbers are what the numbers are, but that subsequent analysis that you're recommending people do can sometimes let you know if it's a stat you want to make a bet off of. And when I hear that stat, all I think is, wow, this is a false narrative that I really hope the public gets behind, and we actually get 3 to 2, 8 to 5 on Mendelssohn, because it's not only that this horse has already proven that he can run on dirt, he's also bred to do it, and then it's also look at the horses in that sample. How many of them are sons of Galileo who couldn't stand up on dirt? Let's take all of them out of the equation, and then let's look harder at some of the other performances, and you're going to see a lot of horses with some American bloodlines who actually ran really well in some races. And, it's one of those things where sometimes when you look at stats, just in terms of win, play, show, you can be losing, how did they run figure-wise based on what they'd been doing before. And I have no doubt in my mind that there are some horses who maybe not improved based on what they'd been running on grass, but horses who, if you took the over-under of what they'd run on dirt, ran over it. There's plenty of those in that sample of the ones who were actually bred for it as opposed to aftermath. Not many horses have had a dirt campaign planned out like this one. There's not a lot of Aidan O'Brien with a target in U.S. racing at all. It's very much, obviously they're focused on over there, and what happens here is gravy. End of a long season gravy. We've got an extra spot in the plane. Let's send this one to the Breeders' Cup. And he's had plenty of success like that. He doesn't circle Breeders' Cup races for dirt horses and send them over. Mendelssohn's different. This is a horse who I do believe probably from the very beginning of the year, because of what his value is potentially as a stud, this is a different deal. And they decided shortly after the Derby, this is what they were going to do. And, hey, Muggs, the handicapping Labrador, has decided she wants to join us out here on the porch. I'll see if I can let her in when JK is talking. But anyway, the point is, this is a unique situation. If we were playing good stat, bad stat, I would call that one a bad stat. But again, please Please assume that's true, and let's see if we can't get odds against on this thing. Anything else in the race that interests you, JK?
Not really. I mean, I guess like maybe Noble Indy, like.
Oof, the last two are so bad.
Yeah, but the last one, right, is like the ride that Rapoli has life fired Javier Castellano over. Like, was he supposed to be on the lead? Was he supposed to be forward? It was a blinkers off situation. Now blinkers are back on. I thought that, his Louisiana Derby was not horrendous. It was actually nice. I mean, so if he runs that race,
it's a long shot. But I mean, gosh, then you see to give you the quality of the field you were talking about before. When you see a horse that's 7-2 on the line who has beaten 54 and 42 in his last two, I guess that's kind of why you were saying Mendelssohn should be odds on here.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's what my point was. I think I tweeted was like the first and second choice can't beat like 95 buyers. I don't, and then there's two hopeless long shots and fixed income Larry and
great name.
Yeah, it's a really good name, and then also Seven Trumpets, who I fell for that way too many times.
I was gonna say, didn't you like Seven Trumpets for like the Derby at some point?
No, I mean I like the horse. I like the horse in some Derby preps, and he always let me down. And then my tongue is firmly in cheek, and then Sea Hinge, whose trainer can't win a dirt race.
Now there's a horse that looks like he can't stand up on dirt, and there was an extra spot in the stall, like we were saying before. Sea Hinge fits that mold.
And then there's a horse drawn on the outside that needs one turn, and he's going to get it today, but I think he still needs a little shorter.
Firenze Fire is a little bit interesting. I mean, clearly stretched in the last couple of races, going, the old thing we see a million times. They got the Derby dreams, and to their detriment. But when I go back to that Gotham, it's hard for me to. If you made me pick another horse, if you made me put a beeline in, it would probably be on Firenze Fire, just with the thought that exactly what you said, JK, getting back to doing what he wants to be doing. But it wouldn't shock me, but it's not an exciting proposition.
I think he just needs him to run a little bit in front of him. I mean, I think he's one that eventually they'll quit with this madness and they'll run the horse in the Alan H. Jerkins, formerly known as the King's Bishop. And I think that in a race like that, where he's going to get a good setup with some actual pace to close into, he could be dangerous again. But I just think Mendelssohn's going to be tough in this spot. He's drawn outside. They've been pointing to this. This spot. I do believe that his performance in Dubai was bias aided. However, he's going to be 40. He's still going to run a triple digit number if in that situation. I mean, what
right.
Andy
instead of a 112.
Yeah, right, exactly. I mean, Andy said. I think I read an article today just to think. I think Andy Byer said 106 was the official number that he gave him.
And that came out low based on some other international estimates I saw, but that's probably right. But even so, if you see, whatever you want to take away from him from the fact that was bias aided, and it was, he's still a very talented horse. All right, that's 10 minutes talking about how a 4-5 shot can't lose. Let's move on, JK, to the Belmont Sprint, Grade 2, a race that for a Grade 2 sprint doesn't have a ton of pace. My eye kept going to Shaft of Light, number 4 for your man, Jorge Navarro, as a chance to be the best of speed and possibly hang on. But obviously the horses who will take most of the action in here are drawn down inside in Limousine Liberal and Whitmore. I just don't love the pace scenario for either of them. I can't get excited about betting either one. I wouldn't want either to beat me in the picks. And then, of course, the other one who I kind of feel similarly about, Favorable Outcome, ran pretty well last time, chasing a loose leader. I kind of feel like it could almost be the same thing again here, though. If you made me make a pick, I'll pick Shaft of Light. Who do you like?
Yeah, Favorable Outcome just hasn't been very good this year. I mean, last time he had dead aim and just couldn't really run by recruiting ready. It was in the slop, so you still don't really know what that means. I'm going to fade him a little bit here. I agree with you on Shaft of Light.
That's interesting. You don't give him favorable outcome a little extra credit because it was slow and the other horse was on the lead.
Well, okay, so let's just put a line through it. The two before that just weren't very good.
If you do that, you can't. Yeah, you can't do. If you put a line through it, he won't look very good. You have to say it's a little bit of a buried race because of that. And I'd like him so much more if it seemed like it was going to be a different pace scenario here. But why isn't he going to be chasing a loose-ish? I love Lulu. I guess will make the lead or could make the lead over Shaft of Light. But I just think Shaft of Light's going to be the best of speed and could still prove hard to run down.
I actually think that Lewis Field's going to be on the lead. That horse is stretching from 6 to 7, has been running at 6, has been fast at 6. So I actually think that Lewis Field could potentially be on the lead or sitting right off of Shaft of Light just because that one's drawn outside. So I think they'll actually run a little bit here. I think Shaft of Light, like you said, is the most likely horse to be the best of speed. I think Limousine Liberals, I actually envisioned myself starting off a pick 6 ticket, singling Mendelssohn and singling Limousine Liberal, and then seeing if I can hit those two. And if I hit those two, then I'll just chill. If I miss, then I'll play the pick 4 back. It's kind of an idea that I came up with looking through these. I think Limousine Liberal is going to be tough in here. One of the things we talk about all the time is when a horse that I don't like in a spot runs through my bad opinion, then I respect them even more in their next start. And Limousine Liberal is one of those. I thought he had no shot in the Met Mile, and he ran huge that race. Missed the break a little bit and still ran third to those two talented horses. And so now cutting back to where I think he should be, going 7, I think he's going to be extremely tough off of that. He's going to, even if they don't fly in front of him, the reason that we're having a hard time with the pace scenario is because there's no burners. And so what's going to happen is these horses are going to do what we've been very lucky horses have been doing to Long on Value, which is they're going to invite him into the race. He's going to save ground down on the inside with Jose. Jose's not going to rate him all the way back. Jose will have him in the race. Jose's a fairly aggressive rider who will keep him in position. They'll never disconnect from him, and he'll mow them all down late while they've been messing around going, 23:46 when they could have gone faster and put him out of got him off the bridle. I just see it kind of being a little bit of a jockey's dilemma, him being in a great spot and running by them all.
Interesting. Well, I certainly like Limousine Liberal as an A, and your opinion makes me much more excited about using him. I don't think it's going to set up for Whitmore, but I wouldn't let him beat me. I'm just going to try to get through it without having to use too much opinion. Would you use Shaft of Light, or do you think he'll get cooked?
Yeah, I think it just depends on how you're going to, if I'm trying to do my cheeky pick 6 idea where I'm just trying to go single and be alive to the, pretty much turn it into a pick 4 if I can and see what happens. I want to just use that one. But yeah, I do want Shaft of Light as the best of the speed. He's been running good numbers, and he's one that I would definitely consider. It just depends on what my final decision is. If I'm playing some doubles or something like that, I'm definitely going to use Shaft of Light.
All right, let's move on to the Belmont Oaks. Interesting affair. Whose train do you end up on here?
This is a tough race. I'm very disappointed in Significant Form's last race. The figure was slow 2 races before, which she won impressively. And then she kind of had no excuse in the last one. I'd already kind of told myself it's really hard because, even last fall, I had when Rushing Fall was doing so well, I kept hearing how good Significant Form is and how Significant Form is going to be better longer. And she's Chad's Belmont Oaks horse and blah, blah, blah. And now I'm having to throw something that I told myself last October that I was going to be doing out of the window. So I'm going to try to be against her a little bit. I'm not 100% sure, but if you look at the dates and the times, I think that the two Chads were working with one another. So I'm going to try to find those videos online somewhere to see if one of the two got the best of the other one. I guess I'm going to go with Toinette here. I thought that race to Edgewood was really good. I thought that Daddy is a Legend and Rushing Fall are two really talented horses, and I thought that Toinette ran really well in that spot. I think that I think that she's one that could be dangerous in here and maybe be ignored a little bit. But I'm also going to probably take a look at Paved a little bit. I think that Paved for Mike McCarthy, she's done some pretty cool stuff on the turf in her career, and winning the Honeymoon last time, and then winning the El Camino Real against the boys. I don't think that the distance will be an issue. I've talked to Mike McCarthy a few times, and he doesn't love putting them on a plane. So if he puts them on a plane, he's doing it for a reason. And I think that she could be tough in here. I'm just going to try to beat the Chads, and I'm really not sure where I'm going to go. I feel like I'm going to have to spread a little bit here, but those are definitely some that I'll consider. I need to do a little bit more work on the Euro. Athena, I don't know how good she is.
She's live. She's not a shorty, but she's live. I wouldn't go crazy trying to beat this Mighty Scarlet at all. I mean, I thought that last race was super impressive. Very slow pace there. And granted, it could be again, and the post isn't great, and I'm not interested in a short number. I'm not really interested in Mighty Scarlet sub 6-1 or whatever, but I think she could run a lot better. I think that last race is just better than it looks. Again, I don't really see that they're going to cook here, but the distance feels like it should agree. I mean, it will agree, obviously. That second start of her life, the mile and 3/16, just, imperious in victory, as the Queen would say. And then big excuse last time, chasing slow pace, very nice late fractions in there from her. And then you talked about Athena, who I will not let beat me. A couple of things I notice about her. Well, obviously she's got rock solid form on the USA style ground that we saw at Ascot. Beaten 8th in a Group 2 in the Ribblesdale. It's not sexy form, but it's form that could translate to a high level in the USA for sure. Those are serious horses. And then, the Pretty Polly, Group 1, to be able to run third in a Group 1 over there pretty much suggests you shouldn't be more than 6-1 in this race, at least as far as I'm concerned. And she just looks like she could be getting better. She's got rock solid left-handed form, which is nice to see. Nothing you want to take a short number about. The 9-2 of the morning line is probably about as short as I'd go, but maybe gets a little bit buried in. If you're doing that pick 6 JK and you're spreading, you really want to get beat by this guy?
Yeah, no, I definitely don't want to. I'm just talking about the race in general. I mean, she's definitely one that I'll use. And to be honest, your little rant kind of convinced me a little bit more. I'm just very against significant form.
Yeah, I'm not. I loved her too. I was in that extremely large group of people who were big losers when she got DQ'd in that first race, and I heard the same stories that you did around Breeders' Cup time. That Rushing Fall was the one the team liked better for the day, and significant form was going to be the one who liked better for longer. I wouldn't oppose her to the point where you're going to get. You really want to lose that pick 6 because you didn't have her when you talked about her for this race last November. To me, this is a classic defensive use as opposed to one that you want to be like super psyched about trying to beat. Do you not agree?
Yeah, but I'm a believer in like that when you can overcome your prejudice like about a situation and see it clearly and have the wherewithal or like the cojones to toss a horse like that. Those are what your days are made of. Like those are like your years get made on plays like that where you can save those combinations.
4-5 though, she's not. I don't really agree. You're identifying it as a spread race, and you're taking a horse that in no world should be more than 4 or 5-1 to win. Like, why be a hero? You're not beating some 4-5 that's going to make your year. You're just throwing out a horse that is an obvious contender. I don't get it.
No, yeah, I mean maybe I'm thinking just like the theory of like making your year. I mean, no, this spot is not one of those.
I'm saying you should press her. I'm just saying she's just Mike says it in Betting with an Edge very well. Horses like this, you use the horses like this that a lot of people are going to press. You still get value, I believe, taking a horse like this that a lot of people are going to press and just using them like another contender. And that my gut tells me that that's the case, and my gut tells me you feel silly because a lot of times I agree with what you're saying that when you used an interesting phrase about overcoming prejudice, and when there's like a really pressing reason to bet against a horse, I think that's exactly right. But at the same time, when you had an opinion on a horse that was going to do well in a race 8 months ago, and then you go from, instead of using her as the B that she should be, you make her an X, like that just doesn't compute with me.
No, I get that. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. I guess it's my betting personality in terms of I can handle when I'm wrong. It doesn't. I can swallow it pretty good. I think I swallow it sometimes better than most.
For sure.
The other thing is that I've continued to adjust my game to bet what I think is going to happen rather than what could or I hope is going to happen. And so I just don't think she's going to run well. And so using her, but I do get it. I do get the idea of using her defensively.
But I like what you said about putting it down to betting personality. I think that's right. I guess what really caught me was you said you thought it was a spread race. So therefore I feel like you do really well when you wed into that. What I think is going to happen in spots where you're narrowing down. And I feel like in a spread race, you're sort of necessarily saying you don't have that strength of opinion.
Yeah, no, I think it's a spread outside of her, right? I don't think she's going to run well, and I think she's going to be, she's going to be the second choice. No, she's going to be the favorite.
Yeah, if not the favorite. I mean,
she's going to be the favorite.
Be the second choice.
Yeah, she's going to be 9-5.
I don't think so. I don't think the math is going to work out. There's too many contenders in the race. We haven't even talked about La Senora yet. I don't know. It's a fascinating race. I just thought that was an interesting conversation about the difference in the way that we sometimes look at the world in these spots. And I think both ideas are valid. And at the end of the day, it just comes down to what your betting personality is. I know for me, I detest – it hasn't happened to me much because I wouldn't put myself in the position, but I would be very unhappy with if you asked me Breeders' Cup morning who was going to win the Belmont Oaks, I would have said significant form. And therefore, even though I don't love her in the spot, I would feel it would gnaw at me. You're, I think, better at just saying, whatever. I changed my mind, didn't work out, move on.
Yeah, no, I think the thing is like I was talking to Eric Bialik about this the other day. It's like, he was actually, funny enough, he was giving me a hard time about tossing a horse. I have learned over the last 3-4 years, like the way that I play and the way that my brain works, like I'm only going to have 2 or 3 or 4 scores a year. That's it. The rest of it's going to be a lot of floating around, a lot of ups and downs, kind of floating in the middle, maybe some downs and downs. And then I have 1 or 2, my years always go down to 1 or 2 scenarios. And some of them they're not necessarily catching 20-1 shots, but it's like absolutely hammering things that I think are going to happen. Practical joke last year in the Allen H. Jerkins. Like we were ice cold to him. There was a lot of other horses in there that fit.
You said it twice now, so I'm going to correct you. I was going to let it go before. H. Allen Jerkins.
H. Allen?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, thanks. H. Allen. Well, I'm just going to keep. You know what? I'm going to rebel now, and I'm just going to start calling the King's Bishop again.
Speaking of Mr. Jerkins, did you see that Jimmy Jerkins just had heart surgery? Apparently doing much better, but had a stress test, and they didn't like what they saw, and he had a couple stents put in. Hopefully, a quick recovery to him. But I saw that in the racing form today. Just as a side note, we know he's not listening, but we still hope he's doing better, and it sounds like he is. Belmont Oaks this year, fascinating race. For me, if you forced me to make a pick, I'll go with the outside Chad Mighty Scarlet with, keeping an eye on what happens in the market with Athena, and Toinette would be used on all tickets. We should probably move on. We got a bunch more races we got to cover here, JK. Any final thought on that, or do you want to just take it away to the Suburban?
Yeah, no, we're good. We got about 11 minutes left according to the countdown clock. You know, I saw an interesting quote, and it makes me happy quote. Unfortunately, I won't be able to bet against him, but Opportunity, Baffert has said that he will no longer run the horse any shorter than 1.25 miles.
Probably wise. We've known he was a grinder for a very long time. He ends up in a good spot here, maybe not as good as the last spot he was in, where we both liked him on the show at a square number in the Brooklyn. Actually, that might not be right. I might have technically picked War Story there, but we were all over the exacta at any rate. Do you like his chances in this spot?
Yeah, no, I picked him on out of the gate to play a double, and you know, I think that Dr. Door is one that could be a little bit tough. But I worry about the distance. I think that Dr. Door should be ridden forwardly. I saw a Baffert quote that made me a little nervous, where he mentioned that he was questioning the distance, but he thought that the 1-turn 1.25 miles would be the best scenario for him to get 1.25 miles. I'm concerned that he might be rated a little bit, because one of my reasons for loving Opportunity was that Dr. Door would just be kind of sent out of there, like, let's go on with it. He doesn't have to answer any questions to the tactics of Dr. Door's owner, considering that he lives in the same house as the owner.
What do you, JK, are you suggesting that Bob Baffert would use team tactics in an important race at Belmont Park? Surely you jest.
No, I don't believe. No, I'm not. You stay off you better get off B squared, or you're gonna have big problems, Mister.
I don't want LeBron coming after me. I can take you and Cube and B squared, but LeBron would squash me like a grape, so I'm gonna behave.
Yeah, no, I think that he's gonna be tough. I think that he can. I think that Dr. Door could set it up for Opportunity. My long shot look is for a horse by the name of the Lieutenant, who happens to be a half to a horse by the name of.
Who is Lieutenant related to? Let me look at this pedigree real quick. You're going to have to give it to me.
Justify.
Oh, you're kidding me.
Yeah, he's a half to Justify.
I didn't know. How did I not know that? That's why.
Yeah, so, maybe the Lieutenant can relive some of that Belmont magic. No, I really do think he's a talented horse. He's in great hands with Mike McCarthy, has run some good numbers in the past. The 1-turn 1.25 miles. I think the 1-turn 1.25 miles, or the almost 1-turn 1.25 miles, is interesting. I think that it can kind of improve or help some of these horses with their performances. You know what I mean? I think you can kind of get some different looks out of horses that they might not typically get, and get some performances that you might not see otherwise. And so I think that those horses all make sense. But Opportunity is going to be my top pick. Lieutenant will be kind of my underneath bomb type.
I would use Taprit here. I think there's an opportunity to look. I know the last race wasn't awesome by any means, but the fact, well, the Pletchers usually, come back to the races fully formed. By the fact that it was an allowance race that was not necessarily the case. He did hit the gate, offering a potential excuse. I could just see him moving forward here, and he's a horse that obviously has a ton of talent and has done very well locally. Wouldn't want to get beat by him. The fact that you didn't mention him, were you just leaving him for me, or are you against him?
No, I was just focusing on the other two. We had a talk. I knew you were going to kind of be. I think he's going to run well. I think he'll run well in this spot. I think the 1.25 miles, 1.5 miles kind of fits him. Grinding type.
It feels like a now or never spot, doesn't it?
Yeah. Second off, he ran fine last time. I mean, obviously he didn't win, and he was bet to the favorite, but I don't really have a problem with that because. Oh no, he wasn't bet to the favorite. 135.
Nope, not the favorite.
Second choice. But I don't have a problem with that because he's the Belmont winner on, so of course he's going to get bet a little bit. No, I think he can run well. I'd use this.
Somebody just got some bingo. Oh no, it's cell phone that has to ring. I didn't even know in the cabin that we had a ground line in this room, or I would have turned it off. We've got to hope one of the van meters picks it up soon, but. We got one for the blooper reel. No, there we go. Somebody grabbed it. Yeah, timeline was bet to favoritism in that last race. The other thing about this is you say 1 turn. It's not really 1 turn. They start on that first turn. So you do have to It's a very unique configuration, the 1.25 miles at Belmont. And just to clarify on that, it's not like they're running out of the 1.25 mile chute. They did used to run a 1.25 mile chute way back in the day, JK, before you were born. They would run it the way they run the 1 1/8 miles, just going farther back. And the racetrack legend has it that when in the tragic ruffian match race, that whatever started the catastrophic injury that she had, and again, this is urban legend type stuff. I wouldn't go to the bank with it, but that there was some incident with whatever the weird crossover was back in the day in that straight 1.25 mile chute, that somehow that contributed to her injury, and they didn't use it anymore. And that's how they've come up with this wild 1.25 mile configuration at Belmont now, where they sort of start at the bottom of that first turn.
Yeah, I'm looking at it. I've never heard that before. It's definitely interesting. Looking at a diagram, it is a little bit more of a turn than you would think. But I do think that part of the turn issue, like with like not the issue, but one of like the meat of what it is to be a 1 or 2 turn race is that when you go into the turn, you're going full speed or full speed-ish. You know what I mean? Like that's like you're not just like breaking from the turn and then, gathering yourself on the turn. You're running and then you're turning left. And I think that's part of why there's even a conversation about turns.
It's very interesting. We'll have to save it for another day because we're so long. But it seems to me that a lot of people talk about a 1-turn mile like it's easier for a horse without stamina to get. And I just don't think that's logical. And this is one of these things where I've just watched so many UK races. And over there, they always see a turn as helping a horse go farther because the horses run slower during the turn. So, for example, at Ascot, where they run the 2 miles, they run the round course mile with the turn, and they run the straight mile. It is the straight mile that would test stamina more than that round course mile that they run the St. James Palace on. Anyway, it's a good conversation for another day. There's a lot of other factors that go into it, including, JK, as you pointed out off air, like how handy a horse is. And like some big horses might have trouble with that turn, run unbalanced. It might be harder for them. So as opposed to a handy horse who can run a turn well. These are very subtle visual handicapping things that I think players with real knowledge of equine physicality, like our friend Frank McGoey, would probably be able to put into action and, the ideas that a computer probably can't read quite as well.
No, one thing I will say that's different, though, is that when there is in a 2-turn race versus a 1-turn race, in a 1-turn race, there's a lot less opportunity to lose ground and actually travel a distance further than the listed distance.
Good point.
Obviously, if you're going a 2-turn race, you tuck to the rail, you're not going to have that problem. But only a couple horses tuck to the rail typically, and so usually you'll lose ground. You're actually going to run further than a mile at that point. So.
No, that's a great point. Race design changes completely 1 turn to 2. And then on the dirt, you get these whole other factors about, for whatever reason that's never seemed to be solved, when these horses break out of the chute, why there always seem to be, many more off slow 1 type horses from the 7 furlongs on the dirt. That inside that's such an advantage often going 2 turns, with the notable exception of the Kentucky Derby, can actually become a disadvantage 1 turn on the dirt. Anyway, it's a whole podcast unto itself. Let's move on to the Belmont Derby, not Derby, as I famously mispronounced it on the show long ago. Let's talk Belmont Derby, and then let's speed round you some selections at Arlington. I got one in here, JK, and I'm going back overseas. Was speaking with Rob Dove, one of the top 10 pro punters in the UK today, moments after the Hampton Court Stakes, where he tabbed this horse as one to come to the USA and potentially excel. We were thinking more about the Secretariat at Arlington, but with the existence of the Belmont Derby, this makes perfect sense. One of the markers I just love for European horses who are going to come over here and do well is form at Chester. Chester is all turn. Have you ever seen a race from Chester, JK?
Oh, no, I never have.
Watch this Hunting Horns race at Chester, and you'll see they're basically turning all the time with a very short stretch, and they run left-handed. So it's often a very good way to predict USA form. I remember the big Chester race from WC years ago being a reason I used to write for the TVG newsletter in another lifetime, touting WC based on a good run at Chester many moons ago in the was it the Arlington Million or the Secretariat? Embarrassingly, I don't remember. I think it was the Million, wasn't it? But anyway, whatever the case, Hunting Horn has a lot of these markers, loves the ground. I think he's going to be very tough in here. The 7-2 of the morning line would be very square. Obviously, it's a deep and competitive field, and there are a lot of ways to go. And, friend of the podcast, Catholic Boy in here, we'll have to talk about him. Maraud, who I've almost forgiven for that embarrassing video, turns back up. Where did you end up in the Belmont Derby?
So my top pick's going to be Hawkish. I thought he was super impressive in the Pin Mile. I thought the allowance race was extremely fast. I just think he's going to be tough. And here I love Manny Franco when he gets on a good horse. One weird idea I have, and I haven't fully wrapped my brain around it. Sometimes it's tricky. I need like a lot of time to keep looking at the race and more time to visualize it. But I actually think Analyze It's going to run better. I feel like Chad and Jose both got a little bit of a wake-up call in the last race where Catholic Boy kind of like took the race to him and dictated how that race was going to be run. And from Jonathan Thomas's point of view, from what he decided he wanted to do and the way how he was going to be ridden and the way that Javier rode him, that's why they won that race. I think Analyze is going to be put into the race a little bit more. I think Jose is not going to feel so confident when he ranges up or makes that non-asked move. I think he'll be a little bit more diligent. I think Chad will probably turn the screws a little bit tighter in the mornings to make sure that he is going to be able to get the distance if the distance is a question. And I think he's going to be a little bit sneaky if he can show some of his previous races, the 2-year-old races where he went straight to the front and just aired on him. I think there's a chance that they might try to do that with him here. And if they do that, I think he could be tough.
As sneaky as a 5-2 morning line favorite could be.
Well, yeah, but what I mean by that is when I say sneaky is I think a lot of people, including us, were questioning his distance. How far he wanted to run. I think a lot of us.
You look at the breeding; he's supposed to want to run far. I'll tell you what. At the time we all were shocked. It was a shocking. If there'd been in running betting, which heck there might have been since it was a Belmont race. No, I don't think they would have had in running on it. But the horse would have been 1-100 to win the race. And when you see a horse who would have been 1-100 lose, you kind of want to put no finish on the horse in your trip note and be against him the next time. However, when you now sit here and you're looking at your daily racing form and you see the way the fractions on Time Form US come out for the race with a 125 to the half and then a 142 and then, to the next call, and you see how he makes the lead, it looks like the classic Andy Beyer trip angle move into a hot pace that just got kind of buried a little bit. That he sort of ran inefficiently in the way that he went to the lead where he did. Now, granted, Catholic Boy's pace line looks pretty darn strong as well, but it does seem logical what you're saying to me that Analyze It just got the worst of it with that. Where do you stand with Catholic Boy?
I thought that the ride was brilliant. I thought that the way that he was put into the race was brilliant, and that's the reason that he won. Off of that situation, when you're thinking that they might not get the same kind, not setup, but the same ride or situation that was beneficial for them last time, it's hard to lean on. But I think he's going to run well. I'm not – he's no toss by any means. He's definitely a use for me. But when it comes to making a selection on one horse or two horses or kind of building your stuff around, I like Hawkish the most. But – I'm not mad at Catholic Boy, but you know what? The other thing about it with these horses that I think these races get a little bit tricky is they're all three, so they're still changing and developing and doing things and learning and experimenting with different racing styles and tactics and so there's a lot of things that can change and a lot of horses can right wrongs or you can start to kind of really figure out who horses are. These races are hard to make strong positions on, in my opinion.
Things can change a lot. They're still figuring it all out. One thing I'll say is I don't like analyze it at half the price of Catholic Boy. In other words, if you give me somehow, it won't be twice, but if you give me a price and a half on Catholic Boy, I'm going to want that battle-tested runner. But I think spread-wise for me, all three of the ones you've mentioned are backups to my main opinion of Hunting Horn in here. And you almost wonder if Hunting Horn could get a little bit lost with so many different other ways to go, including a horse people love to bet in My Boy Jack. What do you make of My Boy Jack in this spot?
Yeah, his 2-year-old turf form was just fine. I mean, he ran well. He was in a lot of races, and the same idea we had with Catholic Boy when we talked about how dirt racing is much more physically taxing because it's kind of an all-out situation from start to finish, or if it's not from start to finish, at least for 3 to 4 to 5 furlongs. So you are running full speed, and in turf races, you're just kind of waiting, and you're exploding on a more forgiving surface. So My Boy Jack's going to have that same battle-tested physicality and, the mental part of it that Catholic Boy had when he wore down, analyze it in the Pennine Ridge. So definitely one to consider. And Kent DeSormo, there's nothing ever wrong with having Kent DeSormo in a turf race. I'm just not – it's going to be hard for me to, pick. I can use, but I can't, pick or tout or talk about it. I just – maybe he wins and maybe he's good, but I just don't feel like there's enough evidence there for you to really have a strong opinion that that's the case.
Feels sure to be overbet. And I will quibble with one thing. You said you can't ever go wrong or something like that. You said with DeSormo in a turf race. You sure can.
Yeah, no, you can definitely go wrong.
Game, there ain't nobody better.
Right. When he brings it, that I should have used that in the sentence. When you can't go wrong when Kent DeSormo brings his A game on the turf.
Correct. All right. Are we? Did I just look down and we're 10 minutes over? What happened?
Yeah, we're 7 minutes over. I don't.
Sugar. We didn't have a show for a while. Speed round us some Arlington selections and let the people get on with their lives.
Well, let's get the big horse in and the other big horse and the first big horse in race 9. I actually think that our boy Devisadero is going to get his picture taken again.
I'm so not surprised that you said that. Give us some scoop.
Well, and I just think I thought that the mile and the 16th Wise Dan was a little bit too short. He was running late. It was a slow pace, broke well, or didn't. I'm sorry, it was a slow pace. He broke out, and I had some trouble and still came running late. And I think that this third off the layoff is going to fit him just fine. The mile and 3/16. I'm not 100% sure he wants to run the mile and 3/6, mile and 3/16, mile and a quarter. But he's a mile and 1/8 horse. I think that he can handle the mile and 3/16. But I'm not sure the mile and a quarter. This seems like it's going to be a prep for the Arlington Million. I'm not sure that's going to be ideal for him. Arklow in the race before that, the 4-horse, the old Donegal Racing, green and yellow. I actually think that horse is going to excel going longer. I think he's going to be trying a mile and a half for the first time. And I think actually maybe he did try it July 8th. But no, that was just 10 furlongs, a mile and a quarter. So I think I think he could be tough in there. I'm going to try to build some things around him. That's a tough race, though. There's a lot of horses that can win in there. Where else is there?
And if Arklow and Murad can win in the same day, JK, they're gonna have to make another video.
That's going to be that's. I sure hope so. I sure hope so.
I can vamp for another minute if you need to get yourself organized.
No. Is there another video? I was thinking there was going to be an episode 2 or 3. I hadn't seen them.
No, I don't pay attention. I just like my running joke about those brothers who've cost us so much money, taking us down a peg, and who knows? It sounds like Murad will beat you, but it doesn't sound like Arklow will beat you on Saturday anyway.
No, I respect him to a certain extent. I obviously he hasn't run the race that has really burned him in my memory forever. But I do respect him trying something new, going a mile and a half in that spot. Church Social is another one that I've always kind of liked. The performances haven't been great as of late. Did win last time. Figure wasn't all that fast, but was closing into a slow pace. And I think that one could be a little bit tough at the mile and 3/16 as a prep for the Beverly D.
Sounds good. All right, there you have it. JK's thoughts on Arlington. He'll be there playing in the contest. Lots of contest action online as well. DRF tournaments, Saratoga event this weekend. Del Mar Betting Challenge event this weekend, World Championship of Handicapping event this weekend. Go to tournaments.drf.com to check that all out. That's it, JK, unless you have a closing thought. I'll let your silence suggest that you do not. I will thank you for putting this together, actually engineering the show today. Thanks also to producer Craig and AJ. Thanks most of all to all of you for listening, particularly the folks we get to interact with on a regular basis on Twitter. So much fun. Hit us up there with questions or podcast@drf.com. Thanks also to Willie Nile and Travis Stone for helping us out with the intro to this show. I'm Peter Thomas Fornatal. We're going to skip Tuesday. We're going to do Tuesday, and then we're going to skip next Friday. That'll be the end of the summer hiatus. But I think we should come back on Tuesday, JK, if you're around, and recap these Belmont races. You good with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm Peter Thomas Fornatal. May you win all your photos.